Nice headshot.
Okay, we are good to go, so, I'll just informally, as it is, call it to order at, looks like 5:02. Quick roll call, trustee Maher,
Yes.
John Kraus,
Yes?
Janet Herdig or Sue Bronson.
Here.
Timothy Kenny,
Here.
Rachel Ellerman, that's who we're waiting for, I think. Therese Klein, she's excused. Leonard Sobchak,
Here.
and Jake Brissett.
Right here.
So we have everyone here that I was expecting except for the bike ped representative, Rachel. So with that, I think we're pretty good to go considering it's a nice evening. And then we also have Erica Lang from the bid, and here comes Rachel. So we're good to go on us here.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Just a quick reference for everyone here, this meeting was publicly noticed, and so it's on the village website and on all published agendas, so the public could come. We don't have anyone here at this point, but it was publicly noticed. With that, I feel like I can turn it over to you for the review of the introductory town hall. I did send out, so Bobby had provided a technical memo. I have some extra copies here if you didn't bring it with you, if you need to reference it, but I'll turn it over to Phil just to run through the recap of the first round of town halls.
Correct. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we'll go through an overview of our first town hall meeting, and then we'll discuss the second town hall meeting that's coming up on the 29th, the format and what to expect.
The
And
30th,
then,
correct?
Correct. I'm sorry, Tuesday the 30th.
Yes, okay,
Sorry. The third one is on the 29th.
okay.
So, no, your invitation material is correct,
Okay.
Art. All right, well, on Wednesday, the 26th, we held the town hall meeting. And the purpose of that initial one was to engage the community and get initial feedback on the topics that we're analyzing with parking and transportation. Really get a sense of what the high level topics are, so that we can start to organize the themes and dig deeper and provide recommendations. So we held two meetings, one at 1 p.m. and one in the evening at 6 p.m. In total, there were approximately 68 people that were present. We also have been receiving comments through the project input portal, and those comments go to Bart. Bart provides them to our project team. So in addition to the 68 people that were present, we received numerous statements in writing with concerns, recommendations, and some of them also include information about what's going well. So we have that information in hand, and what this document that Bobby put together here for us is a summary. It just identifies the themes. We have a lot more information that we're working on, but I just wanted to give everybody a high-level understanding. The process for our town hall meetings, those of you who weren't able to attend, what we ended up doing, we gave it a brief introduction, letting them know, project objectives, approach, the scope, and then we broke up into 4 groups, and there were 4 stations: Oakland Avenue Corridor, Capitol Drive Corridor, residential parking, and multimodal transportation. Our team members each staffed a station, and we rotated approximately every 15 minutes, and smaller groups were able to provide comments and input on the various topics: Oakland, Capitol, residential, and multimodal. We found that approach to be effective, especially when we have a large group. It allows people a chance to be heard, to speak and share their thoughts, and not be drowned out by a larger crowd. So we found that to be very effective and received a lot of detailed comments. We communicated with the group, the study area. There was a comment that came up multiple times. Where's the study area? Specifically, where are the boundaries? Is it the village boundary, the proper territory, the boundaries, or is it a more narrow study area? And so we provided to them an understanding that, we're doing sample data collection within the core capital and Oakland Avenue areas, making sure we include the high school, the library. We have some other land uses, elementary schools in there, as well as the commercial corridors and multi-tenant residential. But we are doing a policy review of the entire village. So even though the specific data collection is reflected in a more narrow geographic area, the policy analysis and recommendations encompasses the entire village.
Phil,
So
can
key
I ask
themes
a
in-
quick question on that, for the boundaries?
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
Erica. I just remember over the past few years, people were stating that Kensington west of Oakland is used as a throughway. And I guess I expected that corridor to be, that full length of Kensington to be in the area that you collect data. Was that considered?
From a traffic perspective, we're looking at that, for that corridor. We got a number of comments about that.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah. So, and Steve, we have traffic data, correct? There's some information that we can use already.
Yeah,
Is that a correct statement?
And we're still collecting more data.
More data on that. Okay. Yeah. So there is a slight confusion with where the data collection boundaries are delineated and where the village boundaries lie. But what we may do, and this is why we have these meetings, we're going to revise Exhibit 3 and also articulate more clearly, what's involved in the defined area and what's involved in the total village boundary as far as the analysis, just to be more clear. Key themes and interests, I'm going to walk through the four areas where we collected information from the community Oakland Avenue corridor. Visible enforcement. And this is something that also came up in other stations. They want, the community had mentioned a concern that there wasn't enough enforcement, that enforcement in the policy of the current policies just maybe what's needed to help. So rather than aiming to change ordinance or change a specific policy, first step may be increased enforcement to enforce the current ordinances on the books, and possibly reduce the vehicular speeds that people are experiencing in the area, as well as any spillover parking impacts that are prohibited by the ordinance. Intersection improvements. They're looking for best practices for safe crossing of pedestrians, bicyclists, vehicles at the following intersections: Oakland Avenue and Glendale, Oakland and Kensington, and Oakland and Wood. Metro Market pedestrian and vehicular circulation, review that area, surrounding the parking structure as well. There's definitely, that was a repeated theme that came up often, and I think that's not news to the group that's sitting at the table, but some people just want there to be another look at what modifications can be made to bring the speeds of vehicles down, as well as improve the visibility of drivers coming in and out of the garage, and then where there are perpendicular travelers to the vehicles pulling out on the sidewalk, how can that be, how can we mitigate that conflict point? And the next one is clear and visible signage. That's something that also, was a repeated theme, not only just in Oakland Avenue corridor area, but just clear signage of where people can park. And that goes to the education element of making the system work well. Loading and unloading zones for delivery trucks and handicap accessible vehicles. So also reviewing the conflict points for delivery and traffic, and look for opportunities to mitigate that challenge during peak travel times. And then we're going to research zones for handicap and accessible parking. That was a suggestion. We're going to look at some best practices within communities that have elongated downtown areas on how best to do that. Some communities require a certain amount of spaces per block face, be designated as ADA. Others, it's on an as-needed basis. Some, off-street, if it's private, there are different requirements as opposed to if it's public. So we're going to take a look at that and make sure that there's proper recommendations in there. And so if the villages approach, they know how to respond accordingly to accommodate the ADA community. Capitol Drive corridor, school safety, and school zone safety, that was definitely something that was brought up frequently. Explore pedestrian and bike safety around the schools, particularly Shorewood High School. We spoke with a representative from the high school, and I believe that he shares the same feelings of other representatives from the schools in the area. The community has several students who walk or bike to school, and it may vary in intensity based on weather and seasonality, but for the large part, it's fairly predictable, and we need strategies and policies in place that protect that segment of the population. So we want to make sure that we're looking at conflicts with pedestrian crosswalks and traffic. We also are going to be looking at Capitol Drive, intersection at Morris Boulevard and Oakland Avenue. And then there are also concerns at the intersections of Estabrook Parkway, in front of the high school, Larkin, Newhall, and Bartlett. Transportation mode choice. Continue to educate the driving community about bike and pedestrian rules and regulations. That's something that was brought up, once again, as I spoke with people before and after our town hall. They love that there are provisions in place to encourage bicycle riding, but they feel there needs to be more uniform education on bicyclists following the rules of the road and keeping bikes off the sidewalk, things of that nature. Even though it's communicated through the forms of signage, and I'm sure that in other published material, they're asking for us to identify some best practices in other communities where they've educated the residents and employees and others who use bikes in the area on how to interact appropriately and safely within the roadways. Atwater Park, equitable access. Community members had brought up that they want to maintain a small town community feel. They love their park, but they're looking for some best practices in imposing a charge for non-resident vehicles and or pedestrians looking to access the beach. Now, this isn't uncommon for communities that have an attractive destination in a public park or a public beach to attract those from outside of town. And it's a matter of public policy whether the community wants to prioritize residents having access versus non-residents. And parking ends up being a tool sometimes to determine who has preference to the park. And that can be through a fee-based system, whether, but once again, there needs to be technology enforcement and elements that aren't in play today would need to be able to implement that. So there were concerns from community members about the use of Atwater Park and the safety issues that also come along with families that are parking along on street with gear and children and things of that nature, and it just not being well managed in their eyes. And if there are ways to better manage that, that'd be welcomed. On-street parking policies, consistency was a word we heard often. Whether real or perceived, there's some of the community that have voiced a concern. Is it an hour? Is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? Is it 4 hours? What we've heard is, they want us to review the current on-street parking restrictions for inconsistencies. Explore a 2-hour time limit along the entire Capitol Drive. Explore 2-hour parking throughout the village, and a 4-hour parking throughout the village, just to limit the confusion. So bring some consistency to that. We're already looking at all those issues, so we're in line with what the community is thinking, although the specifics will be determined, as we get to that point. Residential parking. Overnight parking was a concern shared by the community, and I'll be honest, there's a split. It just determined, it depended upon who I was speaking to, whether it was a multi-unit tenant or a single occupied home, single-family home, and it seemed fairly split. Some folks wanted to restrict overnight parking, just to eliminate it, and others wanted to eliminate restrictions and allow there to be overnight parking without permit. So what we're doing is we're looking more closely at the characteristics, the nuances around these areas where there's heightened intensity, and looking at the current policy where there's 20 permit passes per license plate in a calendar year. Some people thought that was that arbitrary number. They asked where that came from. Why isn't it 40? Why isn't it 10? What's the magic number of 20? How does that play into